Queen Zara drifted silently above the jagged surface of Krith 9, her sleek observation vessel gliding over the dusty plains like a silver arrow. She had visited many mining colonies in her reign, but none were as isolated or poorly managed as this one. From the corner of her sharp eyes, she could see the alien overseers moving among the human laborers with the usual mix of disdain and impatience. Humans were weak, fragile creatures, and they knew their place, to dig, to haul, to obey. That was the way of things in the galaxy, and Queen Zara had never doubted it. But that was about to change. In the depths of one of the mining tunnels, far from the colony's surface, a sudden tremor shook the rock walls violently. Dust poured from the ceiling, and the terrified screams of laborers echoed through the narrow passages. The quake wasn't unusual, asteroids shifted unpredictably, but the magnitude was. Rocks the size of small boulders fell, trapping some miners and blocking the exit. Among the chaos, the overseers panicked, rushing to escape rather than help the laborers. And then there was Ethan Marlowe. He was a miner, plain and simple, a human with a thick frame, calloused hands, and an instinct for survival. Unlike his coworkers, he did not freeze in fear. His eyes scanned the tunnel quickly, calculating, planning. A large slab of stone had pinned a fellow worker under its weight, and the man groaned, struggling for air. Ethan grabbed his pickaxe and wedged it under the stone, levering it up with all his strength. Sweat ran down his brow and dust filled his lungs, but he did not stop. He worked with precision and determination, muscles straining, heart pounding. Slowly, impossibly slowly, the stone shifted, and the trapped miner crawled free. Above ground, hidden behind the observation vessel, Queen Zara's mandibles clicked softly in surprise. She had expected the human to freeze or run like all the others. But this one acted. He fought the environment itself with nothing but his hands and tools, saving lives in ways no alien could have predicted. More rocks fell and more miners cried out. Ethan moved from one trapped worker to another, improvising levers and supports from broken mining equipment. Each moment seemed to stretch forever, yet he never faltered. His courage was raw, instinctive, and frightening in its effectiveness. Queen Zara had seen the strongest warriors of her empire falter in battle, yet here was a human, alone, unarmed except for simple tools, doing what trained soldiers could not. A sudden explosion of dust and stone shook the tunnel further. One of the alien overseers, a large four-armed creature named Vrix, had tried to reach the trapped workers but had gotten stuck himself. Panic flashed in his multiple eyes as he flailed uselessly. Ethan did not hesitate. He grabbed a thick metal rod and used it as a lever to shift a massive rock, crushing the alien's limbs. Vrix let out a sound that could have been anger or relief, Zara couldn't tell, and crawled free. It was in that moment that Queen Zara felt something unfamiliar stir inside her. Shock, awe, curiosity. Humans were supposed to be fragile, expendable, unremarkable. Yet Ethan Marlowe moved with a mixture of strength, cunning, and compassion that defied every expectation. The tremors finally subsided, but the damage remained. Dust coated every surface, and small fires flickered where electrical cables had snapped. Miners were shaken, injured, but alive. Ethan moved among them, checking each one, making sure none were left behind. He helped the wounded walk, offered words of encouragement, and even managed to repair a few collapsed support beams with scraps of metal. Zara watched all of this silently. From her high vantage point, she could see the human interacting with others in a way no alien of her rank would tolerate. He spoke calmly, he listened, he inspired trust. The overseers, despite their arrogance, were grateful, or at least wary of him. That simple display of leadership was enough to catch the attention of a queen who had ruled hundreds of worlds. Then came the real test. A fissure opened at the far end of the tunnel, spilling a swarm of small, crystalline creatures that skittered over rock and dust. They were territorial, aggressive, and incredibly fast. The miners screamed and scrambled backward, but the creatures advanced, sharp crystal claws glinting in the dim light. Panic threatened to overwhelm the humans, and the alien overseers could not contain the threat. Ethan stepped forward without hesitation. He grabbed a lantern and swung it, shattering a creature against the wall. Another lunged at him, and he twisted, knocking it aside with his pickaxe. He moved like water, fluid and precise, using the environment to his advantage. Falling rocks, broken beams, and dust all became weapons in his hands. He was not the strongest or the fastest, but his mind worked in ways that made him unpredictable and dangerous. Queen Zara's eyes widened behind the protective visor of her observation mask. She had studied hundreds of species, watched thousands of warriors fight, yet she had never seen anything like this. One human, armed only with crude tools, facing a swarm of deadly creatures and winning. Minutes passed like hours. The swarm was thinned, then driven back entirely. The miners, shaken but alive, stared at Ethan with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. The alien overseers, normally dismissive, avoided eye contact, their pride wounded. And high above, Queen Zara felt a profound shift in her perspective. Humans were not weak. Humans were not insignificant. One human alone could do what her finest soldiers struggled to achieve. She had underestimated them, and now she had to rethink everything she believed. Ethan, exhausted but unyielding, finally stepped back. He leaned on his pickaxe, breathing heavily, watching to ensure every miner was safe. He did not boast, he did not demand praise. He simply did what was necessary because it had to be done. That quiet determination, that unshakable sense of duty, was more powerful than any weapon Zara had ever seen. She felt a strange admiration mingled with disbelief. What was it about this species that made them capable of such bravery, such ingenuity, such survival instinct? Could it be? No, it could not be common. This was exceptional, rare. But what if she had been wrong about all humans? Zara's thoughts were interrupted by a comms alert from her vessel. Other parts of the colony reported disturbances, small cave-ins, minor fires, and the mysterious disappearance of several alien patrols. It seemed Ethan's actions had consequences beyond the tunnel. His courage had shifted the balance of power, and even now, the colony's fragile order teetered on the edge of chaos. Ethan, unaware of the Queen's observation, moved among the miners, helping the injured and calming the frightened. A small girl clutched his leg, her eyes wide with trust. He smiled, patting her shoulder gently. The moment was simple, human, but it carried weight Zara could not ignore. Leadership was not given, it was earned, and here it was in full force. As the sun set over the jagged peaks of Krith 9, painting the sky in deep red and orange, Queen Zara made a decision. She would continue to watch this human, learn from him, and perhaps even intervene when necessary. Not as a ruler imposing her authority, but as a witness to something extraordinary, because what she had seen today was not just bravery. It was a statement. Humanity could survive, adapt, and triumph in ways the galaxy had never imagined. One miner alone had challenged everything she believed, and in doing so, he had captured her attention and sparked her curiosity. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow and finally allowed himself to rest. The miners around him were safe, the creatures were gone, and the immediate danger had passed. But deep in the shadows, in the unseen corners of the tunnels and the colony above, challenges waited. Other creatures, other dangers, other tests of courage. Ethan did not know it yet, but this was only the beginning. And high above, Queen Zara watched silently, her mandibles clicking softly in contemplation. One human had changed everything she thought she knew about the species. The shock she felt was not fear, it was realization. Humans were something different, something remarkable, and she was determined to see just how far that remarkable nature could go. The stars over Krith 9 twinkled coldly, indifferent to the struggles below. But one human had carved his mark into the night, and one queen had witnessed it. The galaxy, vast and unyielding, would never look at humans the same way again. The dust from the collapsed tunnel still hung in the air when Ethan Marlowe emerged onto the surface of Krith 9. His clothes were torn, his hands covered in grime, and sweat streaked his face, but there was a spark in his eyes that no exhaustion could dim. Around him, miners were slowly gathering, shaking off fear, checking on one another. The alien overseers were quiet, subdued, unsure how to react to a human who had fought both nature and creatures and survived. Some glared with bruised pride, others merely looked away, unable to hide the respect that grew in spite of themselves. Ethan had no time to dwell on pride or recognition. The fissures that had opened deeper within the tunnels were unstable. Rocks could fall at any moment, and more of the crystalline creatures might emerge. He moved among the miners, directing them towards safer areas, guiding them past unstable paths. Each decision was precise, careful, but quick. Hesitation could mean death, and hesitation was something he had learned to avoid a long time ago. He was unaware that he was being watched. High above in her observation vessel, Queen Zara leaned closer to the viewing window. Her multiple eyes tracked his every movement, noting not only his skill but his instinctive leadership. She had seen warriors from the Zyran Empire, soldiers trained from hatchlings to fight and kill, yet none had ever commanded attention and obedience the way this single human did. What puzzled her most was how Ethan inspired not fear, but trust. The miners followed him because they believed in him, not because they had to. That simple fact was staggering to an alien who ruled through hierarchy, status, and force. Humans were unpredictable in many ways, yes, but some were unpredictable in ways that produced brilliance. Ethan was one such human. Zara's curiosity deepened when she saw him confront a small group of alien patrols who had ventured too close to the unstable areas. The patrols were armed with energy weapons far more powerful than anything Ethan carried. But he did not run. He used the terrain to his advantage, ducking behind boulders, using fallen metal beams to block energy blasts, and leading the aliens into areas where the unstable rock could trap or slow them. His mind worked like a machine, calculating angles, weight, and timing with an almost unnatural precision. When one of the patrols fired a shot that struck dangerously close to him, he leaped aside, rolling to his feet and swinging a metal rod with perfect timing, knocking the weapon from the alien's grasp. The patrol froze, momentarily disarmed, and Ethan did not hesitate. He used the opportunity to knock each one unconscious, careful not to kill them, because he understood instinctively that killing was not necessary for control. He only needed to survive and protect the miners. Queen Zara clicked her mandibles softly, a sound of both shock and curiosity. She had been trained to recognize combat prowess, but what she was witnessing was something different. It was not skill alone. It was intelligence, courage, and a sense of moral balance. The human was thinking 10 moves ahead, and his instinct to protect others drove him to risks that would terrify most alien soldiers. She had underestimated humans for decades, and she now realized the mistake might be more costly than she had imagined. Ethan moved from one patrol to another, binding their limbs with scraps of rope and twisted metal. His eyes flicked constantly, scanning for threats and weak points in the surrounding terrain. The miners around him were wide-eyed, unsure whether to be afraid or grateful, but they followed his instructions without hesitation. He directed them to barricade the tunnel entrances and form small groups for safety. "Keep moving," he barked, his voice strong and steady. "Stay close to walls, watch each other, don't panic." He ran toward the danger, picking up a heavy metal beam and holding it like a weapon, ready to block falling rocks and guide trapped miners. One miner, a young woman named Lyra, stumbled and fell under the weight of debris. Ethan dropped the beam, rushed to her side, and lifted the rock, trapping her with his bare hands. The effort was immense and his muscles strained under the weight, but he did not let go. Finally, with a final push, Lyra scrambled free. She gasped for air, tears streaking the dust on her face, and Ethan helped her to her feet, brushing the dirt from her hair. "You okay?" he asked, voice calm despite the chaos. I think so," she whispered, still trembling. "Thank you." She had witnessed many acts of courage in her life, but rarely had she seen one that was so pure, so instinctive, so unyielding in the face of impossible odds. She had expected humans to be expendable, to be weak, to crumble under pressure. Yet here was one who not only survived but thrived, whose mind and body worked together seamlessly in a way that no alien training could replicate. The Queen adjusted her position, leaning closer to the observation window. Ethan had now drawn the attention of a larger threat. From the far end of the tunnel, a pack of crystalline creatures advanced, their sharp limbs scraping the rock, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. The miners froze, paralyzed with fear, but Ethan stepped forward without hesitation. He picked up a lantern, swinging it in a wide arc, shattering the nearest creature against the wall. Another lunged at him, and he sidestepped, hitting it with the flat end of his pickaxe. He moved fluidly, almost like water flowing around obstacles, using the environment to his advantage. Rocks, dust, and debris became weapons in his hands. The creatures attacked in waves, but Ethan never wavered. He anticipated their movements, adapting quickly, improvising strategies in real time. The miners watched in awe, inspired by his courage. Some even found the strength to fight back, picking up small rocks or tools to defend themselves, emboldened by the human who led them. Zara felt her mind racing. This human was not just brave. He was intelligent, adaptable, and endlessly creative. He thought beyond instinct, beyond reflex. His strategy was not about violence for its own sake. It was about survival and protection. That combination of traits, rare even among the strongest of her soldiers, made him extraordinary. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, but gradually the creatures were driven back. Some fled into the deeper tunnels, while others were trapped by clever manipulations of falling rocks. The miners, exhausted and frightened, slowly began to regroup. Ethan moved among them, checking for injuries, offering words of comfort, and ensuring that everyone had a safe place to rest. Finally, he allowed himself a moment to lean on his pickaxe, breathing heavily. His chest rose and fell with deep, deliberate breaths, but his eyes never left the miners. Safety was temporary, the tunnels were still unstable, and more challenges would come. But for now, they had survived, and survival on Krith 9 was worth every effort. Queen Zara withdrew slightly from the window, her mandibles clicking softly. She had seen something remarkable today, something she could not ignore. One human had survived what would have killed entire squads of Zyran soldiers. One human had inspired fear, trust, and hope all at once. One human had proven that humanity, far from being weak, possessed a unique combination of courage, intelligence, and instinct that no alien species had anticipated. Her curiosity grew. She had to know more. She had to see how far this human could go, and perhaps in observing him she might learn something that could change her understanding of the galaxy itself. Ethan, unaware of her presence, helped the last of the miners to a temporary safe zone near the surface. They were battered, exhausted, and terrified, but alive. That was all that mattered. He gave them quiet instructions, telling them to rest, to stay close to each other, and to prepare for the next challenge. He would not leave anyone behind because that was the way he lived his life. The sun dipped lower over Krith 9, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks. The miners huddled together, weary but safe. Ethan finally allowed himself a few moments of stillness, surveying the damage, noting the areas that needed repair and planning his next move. He was already thinking ahead, calculating risks, preparing for challenges that had not yet arrived. That was what made him different. That was what made him human. And high above, Queen Zara watched silently, her thoughts tangled in awe and disbelief. She had seen strength, skill, and strategy in countless species, but she had never seen a combination quite like this. Humans were underestimated, dismissed, and treated as expendable. But Ethan Marlowe had proven in a single day that one human could change everything. The Queen reclined slightly, considering her next move. She would not reveal herself, not yet. She would continue to observe, to test, to learn. The human's actions had shifted something fundamental in her understanding of species, power, and courage. And she was determined to see just how far this human could go. Because in Ethan Marlowe, Queen Zara had glimpsed a force she had never expected to encounter. A force that could change the balance of the galaxy. The dust of Krith 9 still clung to every surface, and the miners were slowly beginning to recover. Ethan Marlowe moved among them, checking injuries, assessing damage, and giving orders with quiet authority. The tunnels were patched as best as possible with broken beams and scrap metal. Fires had been extinguished. The immediate danger from the crystalline creatures had passed, for now, but Ethan knew better than to relax. On Krith 9, safety was always temporary and trouble always came in waves. High above, Queen Zara continued to observe. She had followed Ethan for hours now, watching not only his actions but his mind at work. He was more than brave, he was clever, resourceful, and unshakable under pressure. That combination was rare, even among the strongest of the Zyran warriors, yet this human displayed it naturally, instinctively. She had never expected to see such traits in a species she had long dismissed as weak. But Zara was not the only one watching. Word of Ethan's actions had begun to spread. Alien patrols and rival factions within the mining colony whispered about the human who had fought creatures alone, who had protected miners, and who had survived against odds no one thought possible. In some quarters, his courage was admired. In others, it was seen as a threat. One faction saw him as a potential weapon to manipulate. Another wanted him removed before he inspired rebellion among the laborers. Ethan, unaware of the political attention he had drawn, focused on the miners. Some were injured, some frightened, and some simply stunned at what had just occurred. They looked to him for guidance, and he did not disappoint. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We need to organize. Some areas are unstable and the creatures could return. We will form teams. Each team is responsible for safety in their section. Stay together, stay alert, and help each other. No one goes alone." Ethan moved from group to group, ensuring everyone understood their role. He noticed a young man who had been cowering near the entrance. Ethan walked over, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've done well," he said quietly. "It's okay to be scared. Use it. Stay alert." "You'll do fine." Some sections were completely blocked, and alternative paths were dangerous and unstable. Supplies were limited, and if further attacks occurred, either from creatures or alien forces, the miners could be trapped. He needed to think ahead, to anticipate threats, and to find solutions before disaster struck. It was then that he noticed movement at the colony's perimeter. Alien soldiers, heavily armed and disciplined, were approaching. Their leader, a tall, four-armed creature with gleaming armor, raised a hand to halt his squad. Ethan watched carefully, analyzing their formation and the way they moved. These were not the patrols from earlier. They were professional, trained soldiers, and they had come for him. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, his hands empty, his mind racing. He did not panic. He did not run. Instead, he considered his options and prepared to face the threat. The alien soldiers stopped a short distance away, weapons raised, their leader's eyes, sharp and calculating, fixed on Ethan. "You are the human who fights alone," he said in a low, growling voice. "You have caused disruption, endangered the colony, and defied our authority. Come with us or face consequences." He needed strategy, not brute force. "Leave the miners out of this," he said calmly. "I will go alone, no one else gets hurt." But weakness can be clever. The rocks around them created bottlenecks, limiting their movement and making them predictable. Ethan struck quickly and decisively, using his surroundings as weapons. Falling rocks pinned one soldier, and he used a sharp piece of debris to disable another's weapon. He moved with precision and efficiency, never attacking unless necessary, always thinking ahead. The aliens, trained in combat, struggled to adapt to his unconventional tactics. Queen Zara, watching from above, felt her astonishment deepen. She had expected cleverness from a human once in a while, perhaps in small skirmishes. But Ethan's ability to turn the environment itself into a weapon, his rapid decision-making, and his instinctive leadership in the face of superior force were unprecedented. The battle continued through the canyon, Ethan constantly shifting positions, using narrow passages and overhangs to his advantage. The alien soldiers, despite their strength and training, were disoriented and frustrated. One by one, they were incapacitated or forced to retreat. Ethan did not celebrate. He simply ensured the miners were safe and that no one else would be harmed. When the last of the soldiers fled, Ethan emerged from the canyon, breathing heavily but composed. His clothes were torn and his hands were bruised and bloody, but his eyes were steady and alert. The miners who had watched from a distance erupted in quiet applause and relief. They were safe, thanks to one human who refused to give up, who refused to be intimidated, and who used intelligence and courage instead of sheer strength. Queen Zara's mandibles clicked in a mix of surprise and admiration. She had witnessed skill and bravery before, but never like this. Humans were not weak. Humans were not expendable. One human alone had outsmarted trained soldiers and protected an entire group of miners. She realized that what she had seen today was not a fluke. It was a glimpse of something remarkable. Yet Zara knew that observation alone was not enough. She wanted to see how far this human could go, how he would react under even greater pressure. She began to plan subtle interventions, small tests that would not reveal her presence but would challenge Ethan's abilities and push him to his limits. She was no longer just a queen observing a curiosity. She was a student, eager to understand a species she had underestimated for too long. Meanwhile, Ethan returned to the miners, checking their conditions and offering encouragement. "We're not done yet," he said quietly. "There are still dangers in the tunnels and we need to be ready. Rest if you can, but stay alert. We'll move supplies, reinforce weak points, and make sure we're safe." Others tended to the injured, guided by Ethan's calm instructions. It was a display of leadership, not demanded but earned, and it strengthened the group as a whole. As night fell over Crith 9, the stars above glimmered coldly. The colony, though battered, was alive. The miners were safe for the moment, but the challenges ahead were many. Ethan knew the fissures could worsen, creatures could return, and alien forces could strike again. But he also knew something more important. He had proven that courage, intelligence, and ingenuity could overcome fear, power, and expectation. High above, Queen Zara watched in silence. The human's actions were changing her perspective, challenging everything she had believed about strength, leadership, and survival. She could see the spark of a force that might one day influence not only the colony, but the galaxy itself. Ethan's eyes scanned the tunnels one last time before he allowed himself a brief rest. He did not boast, he did not celebrate, and he did not underestimate the dangers still to come. He simply breathed, collected his thoughts, and prepared for the next challenge. Because on Crith 9, challenges never ended. And Ethan Marlowe, the human miner who fought alone, would face them all, not with arrogance or pride, but with courage, intelligence, and the unyielding will to survive and protect others. Queen Zara's mandibles clicked softly in contemplation. She had seen extraordinary bravery before, but nothing like this. One human had shown her that courage was not measured by size, strength, or weaponry. It was measured by heart, by mind, and by the unwillingness to surrender when all seemed lost. And in that moment, Queen Zara made a decision. She would continue to watch. She would continue to test. And she would see how far this human who had already defied every expectation could go, because Ethan Marlowe was not just a miner. He was a symbol of something greater, something that could change the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. And in the quiet of Crith 9 night, as the miners rested and the stars shone above, one queen understood that the human she had dismissed for so long might just be the most remarkable force she had ever witnessed. The deep tunnels of Crith 9 were silent now, but the silence was deceptive. Ethan Marlowe moved cautiously, lantern in hand, scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. He had learned quickly that the asteroid was alive in its own way, shifting and cracking, sometimes collapsing without warning. But tonight, the threat was not the tunnels themselves. It was the knowledge that alien forces were still out there, watching, waiting, planning. He had no illusions about the dangers he faced. The soldiers from earlier had retreated, but they would return, and next time they might not hesitate to strike. And the crystalline creatures, though driven back, could regroup and swarm again. His mind raced with possibilities and contingencies. Each step he took, each decision he made was calculated to protect the miners and himself. There was no room for error. The miners followed him in small groups, exhausted but determined to continue. They trusted him not because he demanded it, but because he had earned it. He stopped occasionally to instruct them, pointing out weak support beams, suggesting safer routes, and quietly reminding them to stay alert. They moved like a single organism, coordinated and responsive, their survival tied to his leadership. High above the colony, Queen Zara observed with her usual intensity. She had been silent for hours, watching Ethan navigate not only physical dangers but the complexities of morale, resource management, and strategy. His ability to remain calm, to inspire others, and to adapt to unpredictable threats was beyond anything she had seen in humans or in any species. Tonight, she decided to intervene in a way that would not reveal her presence but would challenge him further. She maneuvered her vessel into a position above one of the deeper, less stable tunnels and activated a subtle seismic pulse. It was a controlled vibration, designed to create minor collapses without endangering the miners. It was a test. Would the human recognize the danger, adapt, and protect his people? Ethan felt the vibrations immediately. He paused, listening, then signaled to the miners to spread out, move carefully, and avoid unsupported areas. He could sense the danger before it became visible, a skill born of experience, instinct, and constant attention to detail. As he moved, small rocks began to tumble from the ceiling. Without hesitation, he positioned himself to shield the nearest miners, bracing against the falling debris and guiding them to safer ground. The miners watched in awe as he worked, moving like a shadow, reacting instinctively, protecting everyone without hesitation. His focus was absolute, his awareness total. Each minor collapse was anticipated, each danger neutralized before it could harm anyone. Queen Zara observed silently, mandibles clicking softly. The human's ability to respond to danger, to think ahead, and to act decisively was remarkable. She realized that courage alone did not make him extraordinary. It was intelligence, creativity, and the unwillingness to give up that set him apart. And now, with subtle tests she had introduced, he was proving it repeatedly. Suddenly, a louder rumble echoed through the tunnels. A large section of rock began to shift precariously, threatening to block the exit entirely. Ethan shouted to the miners to stay back while he assessed the situation. He scanned the debris, calculating angles and weight, considering the tools and supports available. Then he acted. Using a combination of beams, ropes, and his own strength, he leveraged the rocks, carefully moving them to clear a path. It was slow, exhausting work, but precise. The miners held their breath, watching every movement, knowing that one mistake could trap them all. Ethan never hesitated, never panicked. He relied on experience, instinct, and determination. When the passage was finally cleared, he guided the miners through, ensuring everyone was accounted for. Their gratitude was quiet but palpable. They had survived another danger, another challenge, because of one human who refused to surrender, refused to panic, and refused to leave anyone behind. but the test was not over. As they reached a wider chamber near the core of the asteroid, movement flickered in the shadows. Crystal creatures, larger and more aggressive than any they had faced before, emerged from hidden fissures. Their claws glinted in the dim light, and their glowing eyes fixed on the group with predatory focus. Ethan did not flinch. He positioned himself between the creatures and the miners, his lantern in one hand, a metal rod in the other. He assessed their numbers, their movements, and the environment around him. Then he acted. He used the chamber itself as a weapon. Loose rocks and debris were kicked and thrown, creating obstacles and distractions. He drew the creatures into narrow passageways where their size worked against them, causing them to stumble and collide. His movements were precise, fluid, and almost choreographed. He struck when necessary, but only to incapacitate, not to kill. He understood that survival and protection were more important than unnecessary violence. The miners, inspired by his example, joined in. They hurled rocks, used broken beams to block paths, and followed his instructions carefully. Under his guidance, they became more than survivors. They became participants, contributing to the defense and learning from his tactics. Queen Zara watched, fascinated. She had not expected the miners to coordinate so effectively under his leadership. Humans were adaptable, yes, but this level of instinctive strategy, combined with courage and moral clarity, was extraordinary. Ethan was more than a human. He was a force, a symbol of what humanity could achieve when tested to its limits. As the last of the creatures were driven back, Ethan allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. The miners were safe, exhausted but alive, and the immediate threat had passed. He did not celebrate. He simply ensured everyone was accounted for and ready to move. Safety was temporary, and there were always more challenges ahead. Queen Zara decided it was time to reveal herself, at least partially. She maneuvered her vessel closer to the surface, lowering a small observation drone into the chamber. The drone emitted a soft light, enough to be noticed but not enough to threaten. Ethan spotted it immediately, instinctively analyzing its trajectory, size, and capabilities. He did not panic or attack. He simply adjusted the miners' positions, using the drone's presence as a new variable in his calculations. The Queen's voice, modulated and calm, finally addressed him through the drone's speakers. "Human, I have watched you long enough. You are remarkable. Show yourself." His instincts told him she was powerful, intelligent, and potentially dangerous, yet her tone was not hostile. "Why are you watching me?" he asked. "I wanted to understand," she replied. "Humans are considered weak by many in the galaxy, but you defy expectation. Your courage, intelligence, and leadership are rare, even among the strongest species." I needed to see it for myself. He could feel the weight of the challenge, the implication that his actions were being measured, tested, and evaluated. He did not flinch. "Then watch," he said, "but if you try to control us, you'll regret it." That is not something to be taken lightly. His authority was not given, it was earned, and it was absolute in moments of crisis. As the night deepened, Ethan moved with methodical precision, checking every tunnel, ensuring every miner was safe, and preparing for the next challenge. He was aware that this was only the beginning. The alien forces would not remain passive, the tunnels would continue to shift, and dangers would continue to emerge. But he also knew that he was not powerless. With courage, intelligence, and determination, he could protect those under his care and continue to defy expectations. Queen Zara, observing silently, realized that the human before her was more than a survivor. He was a strategist, a leader, and a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when tested. His actions challenged everything she had believed about strength, adaptability, and potential. In the quiet of the chamber, under the glow of the lanterns and the faint light of the stars above, Ethan Marlowe stood among his people, ready for whatever came next. He had faced danger, outsmarted stronger foes, and inspired those around him. He had proven that courage and intelligence could overcome fear and power. And Queen Zara, high above, understood that the human she had watched for so long was not merely exceptional. He was a force that could shape the future. She had seen humanity at its best. And she knew that the galaxy would never underestimate them again. The miners were exhausted, but they had survived another night on Crith 9. Ethan Marlowe moved among them, checking injuries, ensuring everyone had water, and giving calm instructions for rest and preparation. The tunnels were patched as best as possible, but he knew the danger was far from over. Alien patrols had retreated temporarily, but they would return, and this time they would not underestimate him or the humans. High above, Queen Zara observed silently from her vessel. She had watched Ethan for days, witnessing his courage, intelligence, and unyielding determination. His actions had already challenged her understanding of humanity, but she knew the true test was yet to come. The Zyran Empire would not ignore his defiance. If humans were to survive on Krith 9, and perhaps elsewhere, they would have to confront forces far stronger than crystal creatures or minor patrols. The first sign of the looming threat came as a tremor that shook the colony violently. It was not a natural quake. This one was precise, controlled, and deliberate. From the distant tunnels, the silhouettes of alien soldiers appeared, larger and more numerous than ever before. They advanced in coordinated formations, weapons raised, their intent clear. The humans would be captured or eliminated. Ethan's mind raced. He scanned the terrain, noting weak points, potential choke points, and natural obstacles he could use to his advantage. He called the miners together, speaking in calm, firm tones. "Listen carefully. This is not like before. They are stronger, faster, and more organized. But we have something they don't: intelligence, creativity, and teamwork. Follow my lead and we'll survive." They had seen him face creatures alone, outsmart alien patrols, and protect them against impossible odds. His words carried weight because they knew he would not abandon them. Ethan positioned teams strategically, using the tunnels, rocks, and narrow passages to create natural barriers. Miners who had been terrified before now worked confidently, following his instructions, moving supplies, setting up simple traps, and preparing defensive positions. Every detail mattered. A loose rock could block a path, a fallen beam could slow an enemy, and every miner had a role. Queen Zara watched, impressed. The human had not only survived individually but had turned the miners into a coordinated force. Their small numbers and limited weapons were no match for the Zyran soldiers on paper, but Ethan's strategy made them formidable. She had underestimated humans before. She would not again. The alien soldiers approached cautiously, unaware of the full extent of Ethan's preparations. When they entered the tunnels, they triggered the first of the traps. Rocks carefully balanced to collapse and block paths, forcing the soldiers into narrow corridors. Ethan moved silently, coordinating his miners to flank the attackers when possible. His metal rod, lantern, and quick thinking became tools of both offense and defense. The battle was intense. Energy blasts lit the tunnels, sparks flying as they struck metal and rock. Creatures that had been dormant emerged from hidden crevices, drawn by the chaos, and Ethan used them as unexpected allies, guiding them to interfere with the soldiers' movements. The miners fought alongside him, no longer afraid, their morale buoyed by his leadership. Despite being outnumbered, Ethan remained calm, adjusting strategies in real time. When a group of soldiers tried to flank the miners from the side, he blocked their advance with a fallen support beam, then used a controlled collapse to create a diversion. Another squad was lured into a dead-end passage, where Ethan forced a trap to disable their weapons without harming them unnecessarily. His tactics were clever, adaptive, and precise. Queen Zara's thoughts raced. She had seen the human confront danger, survive, and protect his people, but this was something different. Ethan was not only surviving, he was dominating the situation through intelligence, ingenuity, and unyielding resolve. She realized that this was not just an individual victory. It was proof that humanity could challenge the galaxy's assumptions about weakness, power, and leadership. Minutes felt like hours as the battle raged. The miners, inspired by Ethan, moved with surprising coordination, following his lead and adapting to situations as he directed. Rocks fell, passages shifted, and the soldiers became frustrated, unsure how to counter the unorthodox tactics of a human and his group. Ethan's calm voice cut through the chaos, guiding, instructing, and encouraging. His presence was the anchor that held everyone together. Finally, after relentless strategy and perseverance, the soldiers were forced to retreat. Their formations had been broken, their confidence shaken, and their advance halted. Ethan's combination of tactical intelligence, courage, and leadership had turned a hopeless situation into victory. The miners cheered quietly, careful not to attract further danger, but the relief was palpable. They were alive, and they had survived a battle that should have been impossible. Ethan stood in the center of the tunnels, breathing heavily, sweat and grime coating his face, but his eyes were steady, alert, and determined. The miners gathered around him, exhausted but grateful. "We did it," he said simply. "But stay alert. This is only the beginning. We must be ready for whatever comes next." She had observed countless species in her reign, watched warriors fight, and studied leaders command armies. But Ethan Marlowe was different. One human with limited tools, limited numbers, and limited resources had outsmarted trained soldiers and organized a victory that no one had expected. She maneuvered her vessel closer, lowering a small drone to hover near Ethan without disturbing the miners. Her voice resonated through the drone's speakers. "Human, you have exceeded my expectations. Your courage, intelligence, and leadership are extraordinary. You have proven that humans are not weak, not expendable, and not insignificant. You are remarkable. You have inspired others, created order from chaos, and challenged every assumption we have about humanity. Your actions here will not be forgotten, and they may change the way the galaxy views your species." He had protected lives, inspired courage, and shown that humans could rise to meet impossible challenges. "I only do what I must," he said. "If that changes how people see us, so be it. We just want to survive and live our lives. You have shown that intelligence, courage, and leadership can triumph against superior forces. You have proven the true strength of your species, and the galaxy will take notice. Tomorrow brings more challenges." Above them, Queen Zara observed in silence, her thoughts a whirl of admiration and contemplation. She had come to Krith 9 expecting to see weakness, insignificance, and failure. Instead, she had witnessed courage, brilliance, and leadership that defied expectation. One human had changed her perception entirely, and she knew that his influence would extend far beyond this colony. Ethan's example began to ripple through the miners. They spoke quietly among themselves, inspired by his courage and guidance. Some found newfound confidence, realizing that intelligence and teamwork could compensate for weakness and fear. Others marveled at his ingenuity, his ability to turn any obstacle into an advantage. They began to act with purpose, learning from his example, and discovering that even ordinary humans could accomplish extraordinary things when guided by wisdom and courage. The night passed slowly, filled with quiet vigilance. Ethan remained alert, checking tunnels and ensuring that all miners were accounted for. His mind never stopped, constantly calculating potential dangers and solutions. It was a level of focus, endurance, and resolve that set him apart from anyone Zara had ever observed. When dawn finally broke over Krith 9, painting the jagged landscape in red and gold, the miners emerged from the tunnels. They were battered and exhausted, but alive. They had faced impossible odds and survived under the guidance of a human who refused to surrender, refused to abandon anyone, and refused to be intimidated. Queen Zara descended slightly to greet them from her vessel. The miners stared in awe at the alien queen, unsure how to react. Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself between the miners and the queen, a silent signal of trust and authority. Zara addressed the group, her voice resonant and commanding. "Miners of Krith 9, you have faced dangers that would have destroyed others. You have survived because one among you has demonstrated courage, intelligence, and leadership beyond measure. This human, Ethan Marlowe, has proven that humanity is not weak. Humanity is strong, resilient, and remarkable. Let it be known throughout the galaxy." He had not fought alone. He had guided them, inspired them, and helped them find strength within themselves. Zara regarded him silently, her multiple eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and respect. She had come to Krith 9 expecting to see weakness. Instead, she had witnessed greatness. She had learned that humans were capable of more than she or the galaxy had ever imagined. And she knew that the legacy of this human miner would spread, inspiring others and changing perceptions for generations. Ethan turned back to the miners, speaking softly. "Today we survived. Tomorrow we will face new challenges. But remember this, courage, intelligence, and teamwork can overcome even the greatest odds. Stay strong, protect each other. That is what makes us human." Krith 9 shimmered under the rising sun, jagged rocks casting long shadows, dust swirling in the morning light. Ethan Marlowe stood among the miners, tired but resolute. He had faced impossible odds, outsmarted superior forces, and inspired hope where there had been none. The story of his courage would spread, and humanity would never again be underestimated. Queen Zara watched silently, knowing that she had witnessed something extraordinary. One human had fought alone, led others, and changed perceptions forever. The galaxy would take notice. Humans were no longer weak. Humans were remarkable, and Ethan Marlowe had proven it to all who would watch. For the first time in the long history of Krith 9, humans were more than survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with.